starting at this minute, right now.
He reached out to me.
So you can hear what she's saying.
Welcome one and all. I'm so excited to see such a good group of people here today for the start of what has been, I believe, the 20th, 21st, who knows, story.
And then after that,
Courtney, should I stay on Courtney or on?
We're going to go search.
Okay.
Is Courtney long enough?
no, she's doing for everyone. Then we're going to speak.
Sorry, excuse me.
A man who is described as a pioneer, a man who is described as an adventurer, an explorer, but also a man who is
No, you're good.
a man in the midst of coming to what would become the United States, a land that was built and developed on the backs of people who looked just like him and his Potawatomi wife, which I'm so happy that we have our indigenous representation today. Who are these people who shaped this lovely city that we are sitting in? That's what you're going to find out more about today. So I'm going to give you a little bit of stuff so if you're thinking about walking the rest of the tour. Get your cardio in if you got steps. You got to get your steps in. Today is hot. And it's hot. I feel like DuSable wanted it to be hot for us today. Since he is born around 1745 in St. Mark, Haiti, better known as Haiti, a land that you're probably hearing a ton about today. And you're only hearing the wet parts of it. You're hearing about devastation. You're hearing about political issues over and over and over again. But Haitian people are resilient, man. They're some of the most resilient black people on this side of the world. And we would not be celebrating black freedom if it was not for Haitians who thought and were the successors of the first independent black nation in the Western Hemisphere. I'm going to say that again. The land of DuSable is the land of the very first independent black nation, the first successful slavery revolt on this part of the world. And in the lifetime, it's in his lifetime, while he is here in Chicago, that happens on his mother leave. So he leaves around 1745, what is known as one of the worst colonies for slavery in the Western Hemisphere. The French colony of Saint-Domingue was typically known as one of the most violent and oppressive colonies. Thank goodness Jean-Baptiste DuSable has a way to get out. He is the son of an African enslaved woman and a French maritime worker, a sailor. And through his priority and through his privilege of being able to work alongside his father, around 1770 he leaves the island and makes his way up to the Mississippi River, which was then would have been known as French Louisiana. Because, you know, the United States tried to act like they've been here the whole time. Right. They weren't. And so he comes to a land that the French at this point are working on and living on, and in many ways working with indigenous folks like the Potawatomi to survive in this colony. As a black man who shipwrecks on the coast of Louisiana, and that's not looking so good, right? And so he's able to work with Jesuit missionaries who take him from the southern part of Mississippi River all the way up to what is better known as Peoria today in Illinois country. And he sees it, and he says, I think I can do something here, man. This looks like it could be cool. He starts working with the various indigenous groups, including the Potawatomi, and you won't be able to leave here without me saying behind every good woman, or every good man, is an even better woman, and that woman you've heard about today is Kittiawa, who he marries in an indigenous ceremony sometime in the 1770s, but they have a Catholic ceremony that we know about in the 1780s. And so by around the 1780s, he makes his way here. Imagine this, ain't nothing here, especially that big right behind us. That definitely wasn't there. Had to point that out there. Atrocity behind us. I know I'm on camera, but I get it all the time. There's nothing here. And he says to himself, and he looks at his wife, and he talks to the indigenous people who had been using this land as a port for ages before then. He says, I think we could build something here. Now, you may have heard of people like Julia Lafayette, Marquette. You might see there, they have some stuff on the DuSable Bridge, but they didn't stay. They didn't stay, you see. They thought it was too cold. It was too, they didn't have the gangster. And Jean-Baptiste Point DuSable had that said, it's cold, but I got furs, honey. I'm a fur trader. I can put on the best drippy furs. Sorry to you, that wasn't that time yet, but I got the furs, honey. And I'm going to keep warm in this land, and I'm going to make this one of the most foremost trading posts in business. We're talking about a huge house that they built. It's a mansion. It has French doors in it. It has other indigenous and Haitian and French cultures who brought their home, and they built a family with 2 children. And they keep this alive for 20 years. You may hear from other people that this is John Kinsey's land. This is John Kinsey, Chicago. John Kinsey moved into DuSable's house. Most Christopher Columbus thing you'll ever get in your life. You move into somebody's house and say, you founded it. It's crazy. But when we think about the vision for this land, that none of this is here, but he saw, again, a multicultural space where anybody could make it if they work together. And he does that for 20 years, and we are the legacy of that. Chicago is known for all sorts of stuff on the news. Shootings, violence, but we don't talk about this being the international home of a multicultural business that we are the legacies of. Not that building back there, but we are the legacies of. And so when you walk on this tour, please think about how, as everybody who met DuSable liked him, he's known in the archives. One of the few things that's written about him is that he is a handsome Negro with an affinity for Drake. And for me, that just sounds like a love letter. Quite fun. And so he dies in 1818, and his story is hidden purposefully for over 100 years before Black people like us, indigenous people like us, all sorts of cultures come together and say, nah, there was a family here that looked like us, and we belong on this land. This land is for us. This land is for the indigenous who allow us to be here. And so as we continue to think about what success looks like in Chicago, what longevity looks like in Chicago, I don't want you to think about Chicago as the white city like they tried to tell us in the 1930s. This is our city, and I hope that as you walk around on the rest of the tour and you think about that DuSable made this land for us, and that is why we are here today. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the rest of the tour, and holla at me, I'm around.
Courtney, I think you should leave the tour.
I'm out of here. I got stuff to do. But I'm writing a book. My first book will be out probably in the next couple of years.
And make sure that you buy this book.
DuSable's diaspora.
All right? Yeah, but you know it. She's the real deal. And I don't know how many of you go shoot.
You got it. There's a Haitian in you. We gotta make it happen. You all enjoy, stay cool, have fun on the tour, and I hope to connect with you soon.
All right. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, I think,
Thank you very much, Courtney. Now we're going to start it there.
Yes.
We're going to take the first group with you and I'll follow you.
That's right. Okay. All right. Okay. So we're going to head that way. We're going to head south. Okay. We'll head south.
Right now. And myself, my husband will be right here.
Sorry?
group here. Okay, so this is the second group. Then we have a smaller group, and I'm gonna start right here. So first of all, I'd like to ask you, do you have any questions about what Courtney said earlier about the early American Midwest, the way the town was slowly born under the supervision of Jean-Baptiste Petit?
I have one question. What happened this time? Do you have any idea where the descendants are?
DuSable, the question was, what do we know about the descendants of DuSable? That's an excellent question. He had two children, Suzanne and Jean-Baptiste Jr. Jean-Baptiste Jr. unfortunately died early. So after DuSable moved back to Peoria in the south of Illinois, at one point his son died. They never told us exactly what happened to him, but he disappeared completely from the records there. Suzanne married a Frenchman from Quebec, Jean-Baptiste Pelletier, and she had a daughter, Eulalia, the granddaughter of Jean-Baptiste Petit, and they were all together in the area of Peoria. Then they moved to Missouri, St. Charles in Missouri. We are told that most likely the daughter, Suzanne, died also at one point. We have no specific records about that. But we know that Eulalia, the granddaughter, made an arrangement with Jean-Baptiste. Jean-Baptiste gave him everything that he owned in order for her to take care of him in his old days and to bury him in the cemetery across from his house. And that's what happened. And we don't know what happened to Eulalia and her descendants. Can we Google the name of Eulalia Pelletier? That would be a good idea. Over the years, we have bumped into people who told us, I am a descendant of Jean-Baptiste Petit. We didn't see any papers that we could trace back up. So certainly, if you want to do some research, let us know where to find. Okay, any other questions? If not, let's start our segment of the tour. So you heard everything about the beginning. Come with me now.
Sir, you want to leave the wreath here, or do you want to take it with us and put it in the river by DuSable Park? You want to leave it? Okay.
As you can see here behind me and across the bridge, by the way, this bridge, the Michigan Avenue Bridge, was renamed a few years ago by Alderman Riley. Now it is the DuSable Bridge. And this bridge was built 100 years ago. So last year we had the Magnificent Mile Association. They were celebrating the centennial of the DuSable Bridge, and they were here with us at this particular ceremony. If you look at those walls, if you take the time to read, you're gonna see that they are talking about a number of Frenchmen, among them La Salle, Joliet, Marquette. All those are French pioneers who walked across the Midwest in the 1600s. But none of them stayed. They went across and they left. Jean-Baptiste Petit was the one who finally in 1779 actually came here and established himself here. And this is how this settlement that we now call Chicago started. If you take a tour, you can take a boat. There are several boat tours. They start at Lake Michigan, they go all across the Chicago River, and there is a south branch, and they talk about the architecture of Chicago and how Chicago is a great city. Unfortunately, you are not gonna learn much about Jean-Baptiste Pointe if you take one of these tours. And that's why DuSable Heritage Association created this particular tour that's going to talk about Chicago, but from the perspective of Jean-Baptiste Pointe.
You guys are taking off?
We are waiting for them to move. They are still up there. I'm going to take you right there. Oh, yes. We were asking about you guys.
Can meet my entire family and eat those process, traffic.
Do you have any students with you?
I think some of them should already be here up here.
Because we are giving the tour right now. If you want to join. Okay, so this is we have one group already in front, and this is the second one. Thank you so much. Thank you. I think I saw you in the Zoom. Exactly, in the Zoom conference. Nice to meet you. With us. So the DuSable, yes, I think I'm DuSable. Okay.
Wait.
Lead the way, sir. You don't want to go downstairs yet? Our next stop. Now you remember the beginning of the story of Chicago. We said took place right over there when Jean-Baptiste Pointe built his home around 1779. But where does the story end? The story ends right across from the street, and after the bus moves away, I'm gonna show you. This is where Fort Dearborn was built in 1803. Now Jean-Baptiste Pointe in 1800, he woke up one day and he packed up. He took his wife, his children, and he left Chicago after being here for 20 years. And the question is always, what happened? Why did Jean-Baptiste Pointe decide to leave? Well, historians, they have several theories. But probably the one that makes the more sense is that DuSable was constantly watching what was happening around him in the rest of the world. The reason why he left Peoria around 1778 was because he saw the British coming and taking over the French in the different villages. And then the Americans, after the revolution of 1776, they also came, they took over those villages. And all those groups, they were still supporting slavery. And they were coming with all kind of new laws. So DuSable didn't like what was happening in Peoria and decided to come to Chicago. But around 1800, the same thing was happening. The Americans, they were gaining ground and they wanted to take over the Northwest territories. So the 13 colonies initially on the East Coast, they wanted to expand toward the Mississippi River. So DuSable probably knew that and he didn't want to stay around. So he packed up and he left, and within 3 years, the Americans, they built Fort Dearborn right across the street at that corner there. And usually Fort Dearborn is considered as the first police station in the United States. Now, if you are a black man in 1790, 99, 1800, would you want to be living across the river from a police station when you know that the Indians are being pushed away and slavery is still coming? So he decided to leave. So this is how the story of Jean-Baptiste DuSable ended. It was by him leaving the construction of Fort Dearborn. The Potawatomi Indians in 1812 actually destroyed completely the fort. They burned it down. But it was rebuilt within a few years after that.
You may have answered this question that came a little bit later. What was his relationship to the Native Americans?
What was his relationship? The question was, what was the relationship between DuSable and the Native Americans? Well, the first relationship is that when he left Haiti and he went to Louisiana, and from Louisiana he went all along the Mississippi River to Illinois and Peoria, he met with the Native Americans in the Peoria area. And we believe this is probably where he met Kitty Howard, who was a Potawatomi woman, and he married her. And then they moved together, they came here in 1778, and then they had 2 children. The relationship with DuSable was quite remarkable with the Native Americans. Not only he married one of them, but they helped him with his business. He was a fur trader, and he opened a fur trading post right here by the river. He became a very successful entrepreneur, and his wife Kitty Howard was there helping him. At one point, he got to be so close with the Indians. When the Americans started coming here and pushing the Indians away, DuSable went with them at one point to meet one of the American generals so that they can redesign the accord, the treaty, so that they could stay here. So he was one of them defending them, and at one point he was in line to become a chief, an Indian chief. For some reason that didn't happen, but he was supposed to become an Indian chief.
We know that he left Haiti before the Haitian Revolution. Is never so continued. What was his reaction to the revolution?
The question was that most likely Jean-Baptiste DuSable left Saint-Domingue, which is Haiti now, before the Haitian Revolution. Yes, most likely so. We think around 1765, when he was about 20 years old, that's probably when he got on the boat and left and went to New Orleans. Unfortunately, we don't know anything about his life when he was in Saint-Domingue, and we don't know much about his life either until he got here. The only thing we know, because we have the records, is that he bought a piece of land in 1773 in Peoria. So we know that he was in Peoria at least in 1773. But after that, we don't know the details. He never left anything in writing that we can see. So unfortunately, I cannot answer that question.
What year did he leave Chicago?
In 1800.
1800.
So he was here for 22 years.
Where did he go?
before he left.
Where did he go?
He went back south to Peoria, and then from Peoria, he had a lot of friends there. From Peoria, he went to Missouri in a place called St. Charles, and this is where he died.
Did he found any other cities besides Chicago?
Did DuSable found any other cities besides, not to our knowledge. The other cities that he lived around, they already existed. But he was a good friend of other people who founded cities. There was a certain Jean-Baptiste Maillet who created a city in southern Illinois near Peoria. He was a good friend of DuSable. DuSable bought his land from Jean-Baptiste Maillet. He was also a good friend of a certain Chouteau. Chouteau, together with another man, is credited for being the founder of St. Louis, Missouri.
Sir,
So he was a good friend. So he was well connected. Okay, let's move on. was like 250 years ago. So DuSable had his home right here, and this is the Chicago River that goes into Lake Michigan, and from Lake Michigan you can go all the way. And then if you continue, you find the Des Plaines River, then after that the Illinois River, and then after that the Mississippi River. And once you get into the Mississippi, you go right into New Orleans. So that's why this river was so important 200 years ago, was because they had those huge ships coming from Europe. They will go through the St. Lawrence River in Canada, down into Lake Michigan, and all the way down into the Chicago River, and all the way to New Orleans. So a lot of exchanges, a lot of commerce. So if you had been in a tour here 250 years ago, instead of a lot of tour boats like this, you would have seen huge merchant ships full of merchandise relating from Europe all the way down to the Gulf here. So that's why Jean-Baptiste Pointe-DuSable understood the strategic importance of Chicago, and he had his fur trading post right here, because fur was the commodity that was so important at the time. And from there, he built a mill house, a barn house, different houses, and that's how the settlement started. From there, some other people from Quebec, they joined him. That's why you have so many French names in the streets of Chicago. And this is where the first settlement of Chicago basically was born right here, with the Potawatomi Indians being also all around. Any questions? If not, let's move on. still alive. Nobody has collapsed yet. So are we doing okay? Very good. So Catherine, is there anything you wanted to tell us now?
So I'll share a few words, a little bit about what Jean-Baptiste was like as a man. So as Courtney Joseph, who spoke earlier, mentioned, a lot of the written accounts that we have of him, we know that he was a very handsome Negro man. We also know that he was very much so a connector and a networker. He did a lot of networking with the local tribes and the French, basically anyone that lived around this area. We also know that he was very kind. He was a respectable man. Respected him. He got along with pretty much everyone that he worked with. And again, as Serge also mentioned, he was an entrepreneur, which for a black person at that time was probably unheard of. So I think that's very something for us to be proud of. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of documentation about him. And Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I read somewhere that as he traveled from St. Louis to New Orleans for the shipwreck, he lost a lot of his paperwork and different documentation that he had. So I think that's partly why we don't know too much about him, his birth certificate and things like that. So I'll stop here. And anything you'd like to add?
Great, and this is pretty much what we know about Jean-Baptiste. Thank you very much, Catherine. So he was really a remarkable man for his time. Actually, the full water air show has been cancelled. The only thing we have are the airplanes flying around, so I'm pretty sure we're getting this year. Yes, so DuSable was an unusual man because, as Catherine said, as a black man, he did everything that a black man was not supposed to do, which was to get along with everybody, to be successful in business, and to network, and to start a new city. So those were the different aspects of his temperament. The one thing that Catherine didn't tell you though is that Jean-Baptiste DuSable, in spite of his good character, he got in trouble. At one point, he ended up in jail. Did you know that, Catherine? So in around 1979, the British, they suspected that Jean-Baptiste DuSable was too closely with the Americans, the revolutionaries. They arrested him, they sent him to Mackinac, Mackinac, there was a fort there, and he was in jail for a whole year until his wife and some of the Indians went there and demanded that they release him. And not only that they release him, but that they put him in charge of the estate of that colonel who had arrested him. So he spent the second year in charge of the whole estate over there in Michigan running things. So he was away for 2 years, and then after that he came back here to his wife and his children. Any questions? If not, let's move on.
I've been waiting for a moment, so.
These are the students
Yeah.
from UIC.
Yeah,
They are
yeah.
right in front of us.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
So
Maybe.
we are not doing too bad.
Well, no, not at all. I guess this was a particularly long stop. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah.
So, how much do you think it costs to own your house along the river here? Does anyone of you own your house? You need at least $1 million to be able to buy one of those condos that you are seeing behind you. So the landscape has changed a lot in the last 20 years. Everything you are seeing here, those are new developments, and the architecture of Chicago is well known. The first skyscraper actually was built right here in Chicago, near Grant Park, and then everybody else started building skyscrapers. So Chicago is well known for its architecture. So again, if you take a tour, a boat tour, you're gonna see all the different architecture as you go along the river. So that may be something that you could do if you are here for the entire weekend. Now the mayor of Chicago told us that this river promenade, by the way, which is new, 10 years ago when I went to San Antonio in Texas, has anybody been to San Antonio? No, they have actually a river promenade like this one where you have all restaurants and hotels and all that. And I kept saying, why cannot Chicago develop its own river promenade? And it's as though they heard me and they started building everything you see here. So you can walk all the way now along the river and you're gonna find restaurants and bars and different places. So Chicago is really catching up with other cities as far as empowering its river. The mayor told us that this type of thing that you are seeing here, she will be putting several of them, talking about the story of DuSable and Kitty Howard. We are waiting to see how that's gonna happen. This is the DuSable Founders Trail that was officially named after Jean-Baptiste DuSable. So it would be nice to have different artifacts all along before you get to DuSable Park. Any questions?
They just now made it.
Excuse me, sir.
Okay, we are almost at the end. We have a couple more stops and then we would have reached the promised land, so to speak. But for us, the promised land is actually what we call the DuSable Park. If you look at right here, you see that empty space right across from the river. This is where there will be a huge tower, actually 2 towers, by a developer called Wreathing Midwest. So they are planning to build 2 towers and they have promised to contribute $10 million to the construction of DuSable Park, which is right across from the DuSable Lakeshore Drive that you are looking at here. So this is a very long story that we've been waiting for so long, since 1987, when the first black mayor of Chicago, Howard Washington, dedicated that little piece of land to be DuSable Park. There has been all kinds of problems and the park has never been built. So now we are relying on the developer to finish his tower, contribute to the park, and hopefully we will have DuSable Park at that point. A lot of people are not too happy about that. Why doesn't the city just build a park for the founder? But that's the arrangement that they have made, and we are waiting for that to happen. The developer seems to be quite sincere this time. There have been several developers. It's just that we are not hearing from them. So maybe they haven't found the money yet. But that's pretty much what we are waiting for. The park is right across from the drive, and there were 3 stages. The first stage for the park was to clean up some radioactive thorium material that existed there. They did that. That was phase 1. Phase 2 was to replace the metal sheet revetment all around the land so it doesn't fall into the lake. They did that last year. So stage 3, we're just waiting for the park to be built. It's just sitting there waiting for that to happen. So we are hoping in the coming years this is something that's going to happen. With all the movement last year, the social justice, and why aren't we recognizing black people and brown people who have done great things in the city. So there is a push now to actually put monuments and build parks named after Ida B. Wells or Frederick Douglass or Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable, all those people who have contributed significantly to the history of Chicago.
You said people were upset that it wasn't just a park as opposed to a park and the structure. Tyler, you mean? What were the people upset about? I didn't get that.
Well, the people were upset. The question is, what are the people upset about? Well, the people are upset that it took too long. 1987, anybody else would have had a park already if it weren't for a black man. The second thing they are upset about is the fact that we have to wait for a developer to build his tower, and then after that, they would build the park. So they are asking, why don't you separate those two things? Let them build whatever they want, but the city should invest in that piece of land and build a park. So those are the two main
The Mayor Daily Park.
I got a question. What should we have a fundraiser and we go can donate and then get started?
The question is, why don't we do a fundraiser and just get the park built? How much money do you all have?
Oh no, it'll be a lot of people. It'll be a lot of people giving me.
I know, I'm just teasing you.
That's
That's a great idea. The DuSable Heritage Association 15 years ago was part of a steering committee working with the Chicago Park District to design the park. Do you know what the budget was at the time? After we finished designing all the details, we created a budget and it was $12 million. That was 15 years ago. We estimate now we're gonna need at least $20 million without the statues that the mayor promised, just the park. It's gonna take about $20 million.
Yeah, but every small thing counts. You know what I'm saying? You can have at least 1 million waiting for the rest. I'm the same.
Absolutely. It would be a great idea if we could start a fundraiser and tell the city, here it is, we've raised this much, what are you waiting for? That's a good idea.
Have that and then,
Yes,
that's what I'm thinking. Maybe you can start it.
absolutely. We haven't done that.
And from Detroit, we can get donate too. I'm just saying, not only here, you can just get people across, the nation too.
Well, I'm just hearing that the people from Detroit, they will support such a fundraiser if we start it. So
Yes,
here we
yes.
go. You are being challenged, and maybe we'll take you on this offer.
Yes.
Exactly. We'll put you in charge, yes?
Where did the thorium come from? Was there an industry before?
Excellent question. So he was paying attention because I said phase one of the construction of the park was to clean up the radioactive thorium. And he's asking, where did the thorium come from? There was a light company years ago that was right here. And they were making light bulbs. And the thorium was the material that was used when you make light bulbs. So they existed there for years, and they just dumped all the residues of their work right there by the lake. At that time, that was the place where you dump everything until the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. After the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, it became official to take all the debris, everything from the fire, and dump them in the lake. And this is how now you can walk on land that did not exist before. So DuSable had his home actually almost where the lake met with the river. But after the Great Chicago Fire, we basically dumped everything in front. So a lot of the land that you are seeing here, including Grant Park, the famous Grant Park, if you can walk there, they all came from the Chicago Fire when everything was dumped. So they were dumping that radioactive material there, and it took for the EPA to actually make a donation. There was a lawsuit from the city, from some people in Chicago, and the EPA agreed to give $5 million to clean up the radioactive thorium. Yes. How long is it going to take to build the park? We don't know. We believe that based on the design we worked on with the Park District 15 years ago, if they are serious, now that the revetment is in place, just the park itself, we think within a couple years, they should be able to do the landscaping and put whatever else. The only thing that may take longer was that initially they were supposed to have a piece of art by a Black American artist, Martin Perrier. He moved from the Art Institute of Chicago to New York, and he was supposed to build an art piece to put right on the park. He ended up doing a very abstract piece of art, so all the groups got so mad at him, he had to leave town and run away. They wanted actually a picture of a man, a black man, and not just an abstract art. So we don't know yet what kind of art is going to be, and that may take longer, but the park itself, within a couple of years, should be built. Okay, let's move. So we are almost at the end of the rope, and I just told you already the details of the development by Related Midwest, and at the end of the tour, on the other side, we'll say a few words about the DuSable Park itself. But before we do that, we are so proud to introduce to someone who's been working with us for the past few years in promoting the legacy of Jean-Baptiste Point DuSable. And she happens to be Native American, and she's gonna tell us a little bit about Native American culture and so on at the time when Jean-Baptiste Point DuSable was living here with his wife, Kitty Howard. Starla Thompson.
Good afternoon, my name is Starla Thompson, and if you allow me, I would like to offer you a traditional greeting in Potawatomi.
Thank you.
Puju, Mano Gijagud, Wabano Gijakwe, Nose One, Gade Nododam, Stone Lake Ndonjaba, Elsie Johnson, Nokomis, Odwad Mikwe, and Dow. So what I said in Potawatomi was that my spirit name is the first light that breaks the night woman. I come from the Otter Clan of the Forest County Potawatomi Nation in northern Wisconsin. My grandmother was Elsie Johnson, and I'm a Potawatomi woman. My children are the third generation of Potawatomi people in my family that were born and raised in Chicago. Chicago's home for me. We call it Jigagyanak, and that translates to onion or place of the onion. Janae was kind enough to point out some that are behind us, so this is a perfect setting for our talk. So I would like to share a little bit about Potawatomi people with you. Potawatomis are called Bodwe Wadmi, and that translates to the keeper of the fire. And we were once part of a larger group of individuals that included the Ottawa and Ojibwe. So we call ourselves a Three Fires Confederacy, though we consider those people our brothers. And the Potawatomi are the youngest of the three brothers. So when we split, we each took on a sacred responsibility. And the Ojibwe are keepers of the trade. And that brings me to our talk today, right? Because as we stand here at the settlement, the original settlement of DuSable and his wife, Kitty Howard, I've talked with the association many times about this, that it's my belief that she made way for that, right? Her heritage, her culture, her people, they were very astute in trade of the land. And so this was a powerful couple indeed. And so, as a Potawatomi woman, I try to imagine how it was living at these these crosswaters, right, of the river in Lake Michigan, and it certainly is a sacred place. And so that's a little bit about Potawatomi people. I'm doing research on Kittihawa. You won't find much on her, and you know, some of that might be intentional, as it is an indigenous woman, as a woman of color, right? So I'm doing my own research, and we're going to bring that story forward. And certainly with my friends at the association, they're huge supporters, because I think that will only enhance the life and the story of DuSable. So I don't know if anyone has any questions, but that's just a little bit I'd like to share with you about Kittihawa and Potawatomi people. Yes?
So, my name is Catherine.
Yes.
And I heard her name is also known as
Yes,
Can you
yes.
tell us how she got that name?
That's her Christian name. And it's funny because they call her Kittihawa, but I speak my language, and I think even that is a misnomer. So that's one of the things I'm researching. There's certain words that just don't exist in our language. I think perhaps the beginning of her name was Kitche, which means great. And so I would love to learn the rest. And then so that's part of the things that, you know, this wonderful story will uncover as I learn more and more about her and DuSable. Any other question? No. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know it's a hot day. Thank you. Thank you. In Potawatomi, when we say thank you, we say miigwech. Miigwech for your time.
Thank you very much, Artist Starla, to give us this window into Potawatomi culture. We are hoping that in the future, as we keep giving this tour, we'll have a stronger partnership with Starla, and as she's doing her research, she can tell us more about what was happening back then between DuSable and his wife, and the new friends that he made when he got around here, and those friends who supported him and his business. So thanks again, Starla.
Yes.
Great. Now we're going to the last leg of the tour. Come with me. See you later.
Okay.
So you have a show at 6 p.m.
Yes, I'll dance at 6 p.m.
Yes, so Starla has a dance show at 6 p.m. At the statue there. So if you are still around, you can then see her with her partner during that show. 6 p.m. Okay, why don't you come with me?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, mine is this
There.
one.
There. That's the statue where we're heading right now. That's the statue where we're heading right now. Where she's pointing out.
Well, here in this last leg of the tour, this is the underpass under the DuSable Lakeshore Drive, and an artist years ago was commissioned to put in mosaic the story of early Chicago. You can see that she referred to DuSable at the beginning there as a French Canadian. And so different people are grabbing the origins of DuSable, and there are different theories. And DuSable coming from Haiti is probably the most accepted theory of where he came from. We spoke earlier about the early pioneers, and this is what they were doing. Early on, the Marquette, Joliette, La Salle, they all went across the Midwest, including they went by Chicago, but they didn't stay. Here they are referring to them as Jean-Baptiste was the first one who came and actually stepped there, and they are giving you an idea of what this cabin was like. But you remember I mentioned earlier that in addition to his quote-unquote cabin, DuSable also had a bread house, a barn house. There were different edifices built by him, so it was actually a village, not just one cabin. What you are seeing here is what we spoke about earlier, Fort Dearborn, as you can see, that is right across from the house of Jean-Baptiste Point DuSable, and you have a police station right there. That's what I just mentioned earlier. The artist that was commissioned to do this artwork did not consult with any one of us. Back then, she wrote her own thing. And she's referring to that French Canadian. We do not agree with that. Can we get it fixed? That would be one possibility to try and fight and have it fixed. Or what we are thinking, on the northern bank of the river, when the developer finishes with the store, there will be another underpass on the northern bank of the river, and we would like also on both sides to create a tunnel like this, and on one side where you would have a story of the indigenous people, the Potawatomis, Chitihawa, and on the other side, Jean-Baptiste Point DuSable from Saint-Domingue all the way to when he died in St. Charles. So we can tell our own story on the other side, or we can go and fight to get this one corrected. We are not sure yet. In 1833, that's when Chicago became identified as a town. So the official date of incorporation of Chicago is around 1833 on the 4th of March. So that's why every year around the 4th of March, DuSable Heritage Association, they have an event celebrating what we call DuSable Day. They didn't listen. They kept pushing the Indians until they got them all the way out.
Sorry. No, it's okay.
And that's what basically increased the size of the lakefront after the fire.
Another person, you create oxytocin. When you hug another person, both people create oxytocin within them. You hug on the left side. And both hearts need to unify. Chicago, peace, love, forgiveness. Know who you are. Know who you are. Learn your beat. Learn your frequency, 432. 432 is what this tree is vibrating at. 432 is what the earth is vibrating at. 8 cycles per second. Okay? And that's what we need to understand. We need to vibrate at that frequency. All right? Anybody got any more questions or anything? All right.
Good. So now we have both groups together for our tour of the DuSable Trail. We all students?
Yes!
Good. Are you ready next year to give the tour yourself? Oh, not yet. Okay. We'll be training you. But at least you get your feet wet this year, so that's good. And I'm sure Edzia did a great job and Courtney with you. So we'd like to take this opportunity to thank so much our new friends, the 64th Street drummers. We had heard about you, but we didn't know who you were. So today we are discovering you, and we are so happy that you decided to join us in celebrating the founder of Chicago. And we hope this is going to be a tradition that in your community you're going to talk about that, about the founder of Chicago, Jean-Baptiste DuSable. And hopefully when the park is built across the river, we'd like to invite you to come back and join us to celebrate the opening of the DuSable Park.
Much love. Much, thank you so much. Thanks for having us today. We always love to be around. Beautiful people.
Excellent. Okay. So what we're gonna do now, we are at the end of our program. So it's there or myself, we're gonna say a few words about the future DuSable Park there, what the plans are, where we are. And then after that, we're gonna hear a little bit more from the drummers, and that's gonna be the end of our program for now. Is that correct? It's there? That's correct? Oh, yes, yes also. So, okay, so in that case, that's right. We're gonna have Fahim of the Floating Museum say a few words about those big heads that you are seeing behind me, what they mean. Then we talk about the park, and then some more drumming, and that's the end of our program. Okay, so Fahim.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming down today. My name is Fahim Majid. Hey. And we have a lot of flames in the house. I'm also a professor at UIC in the art department. So take my sculpture class, 100 level if you need it. But welcome, welcome to everyone. So this is, I'm a co-director of an organization, an arts nonprofit called Floating Museum. And basically we're an art collective that think of the city as the museum and the neighborhoods as the galleries. And we're thinking about how to spread across cultural investment across the city. So this is one of our exhibitions, which is made up of 4 heads that was part of a committee of indigenous art makers, African-American museum practitioners from Field Museum and DuSable Museum. And these are works from their collection along with portraits of some of our community stakeholders, including one that you may recognize that stood in for Jean-Baptiste DuSable. You'll see him on the other side. But basically there are 4 portraits. One is of Harold Washington, one is of Jean-Baptiste DuSable. One is of Kitty Hawa, who we've been talking about all day, along with Jean-Baptiste DuSable, his Potawatomi wife. And then the other one is just an unnamed boy who is a sculpture from DuSable Museum's collection. And the idea of the inflatable monument, Founders Monument, is really giving the people an opportunity to maybe rethink how we think about founding. And then also the ability to move it around the city and have it in places that often share or are doing hard work, but just maybe use it as a tool to draw a little more attention to the work that's being done in our neighborhoods. If you want to learn more about Floating Museum, we're doing a lot of interesting things. We use outdoor art as a way of galvanizing community. You can just Google us, Chicago, look up Chicago Floating Museum, and we'll pop up, okay? Or floatingmuseum.org, and you'll see all of our work. But other than that, hopefully I'll see you, the majority of you on campus, and thanks for coming out today.
Thank you very much, Fahim. Fahim has been instrumental in pushing the artistic side of what we do in the DuSable Park Coalition, and we are very grateful to him in putting in pictures what we are trying to say with words, how we feel about early Chicago and the founder of the city. So thank you again, Fahim and the Floating Museum. I must remind you that There are a couple more events taking place later today. We want to have fun actually the whole day, not just this morning. So at 5 p.m., the DuSable Heritage Association will have a movie, a Haitian movie, very interesting one that talks about how Haiti contributed to the culture of Cuba through coffee. Did you guys know that Haiti sent coffee to Cuba, and that's how Cuba became one of the biggest exporters of coffee? So it's there, and the DuSable Heritage, they will show the movie later on, and you can attend the movie online actually, and he will probably give you more details on how to do that. So that's gonna be from 5 to 7 p.m. However, at 6 p.m., the Floating Museum here is gonna have an artistic presentation, a dance featuring the indigenous people, the Potawatomi Indians. You just met Starla. She's gonna be performing with her partner at 6 p.m. So you have a choice. You can either go to the movie at 5 p.m. or join us here for the dance at 6 p.m. And certainly we hope to see you next year again for another exciting event. Now, before we end, I'd like to ask Edzer, does he want to say a few words about the park that is right across the river?
You want to start and I end?
Okay, he's asking me to start. Yes, I told my group some of that already during the tour, that in 1987, the first black mayor of Chicago, Harold Washington, got very excited about the idea that a black man had founded the city. Nobody knew about it. Nobody was talking about it. And he decided to dedicate this little piece of land that you see there to be the future DuSable Park. 1987, and the park has not been built yet. And the question is why? If you go all along the lakefront, this is the only piece of land that has not been developed yet. And I'm gonna let you do some research and find out why. But now there seems to be a renewed interest in seeing the park built. And DuSable Heritage has been working now for the past 20 years together with the DuSable Park Coalition and Friends of the Parks. They've been instrumental in pushing for the park to be built. So it's been a long effort, and finally we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And where there was phase one, where there was the cleaning of the park, they removed the radioactive thorium that was there. The first phase, if you look at the piece of land, you see all that metal sheet that goes all around, that beautiful metal sheet. It was just built last year so that the land doesn't fall into the water. And the last phase, phase 3, will be the actual construction of the park itself. And it's there, and his organization, they are still fighting with the park district to actually have this third phase completed. So Edzer, can you tell us where we are in that regard?
Okay, thank you, Serge, for this history on DuSable Park. So right now, there is a proposal out there where DuSable Park will be built. In addition to that, there will be the river walk will be expanded, and there will be monuments to honor DuSable and Kittihawa. So the project grew from something like $12 million a few years ago, but now it's going to be a $40 million project. So we're not taking anything for granted, so we have to fight to get it built, because it's been 34 years in the waiting. Isn't it a little too long? All right then, so now we want everybody's help, to push for DuSable Park. As Serge said, other parks have been built after 1987, state-of-the-art parks. Now, DuSable Park is still left hanging, left languishing. We cannot wait for another 34 years. So we have to put everything in the balance to make sure that DuSable is recognized, that DuSable Park is built, that's the next big project. And we cannot rest on our laurels. We got to push forward. And we need DuSable Park. And why do we need DuSable Park? Because this is the place where Chicago, can reconcile with itself. Because Chicago has strayed from its destiny. The destiny of diversity. Chicago was born to be diverse. It's the product of a black man of Haitian descent and a Potawatomi woman. So that history has to be reflected on DuSable Park. So DuSable, and for some reason, Chicago has walked away from that. We need to get Chicago back to where it belongs. And DuSable Park is the place, is the venue, is the locale where all that can happen. Remember, we told you that the DuSable settlement was a model for multiculturalism, was a model for diversity, was a model where differences were bridged up, where differences were reconciled. Everybody was on equal footing in his settlement. There was no such, people from all over. They came, they got solace, they got a welcoming place to be in his settlement. So DuSable Park can mirror DuSable settlement, making it that place where everybody is welcome, no matter how different they are, no matter where they came from, no matter their immigration status, because DuSable himself was an immigrant. So this is, yes. Yes. Yeah, right. Yes, okay. All right. Is that this is why I studied in France? Okay. All right. But that this so and you're talking about the French Revolution, right? Oh yes, 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 yes. Yes, as a matter of fact, I mean this place was what they call a polyglot place where many languages were spoken. I mean, Indian languages and French, English, everything. That's a polyglot place. So that's what the settlement was all about. So this is what we're longing for DuSable Park to be. That place.
Say it in French. This is where it started in French. He wants you to say it in French.
So we want to hear what DuSable sounds like.
Oh, okay, all right then. Okay. So DuSable would have said, je suis venu ici de Haïti et j'ai construit un établissement où tout le monde était bienvenu, quelles que soient leurs circonstances, quelle que soit leur extraction sociale, leur extraction nationale. You with me? Are you with me? Okay. Okay, all right then. Okay. Okay, but now in the mother tongue, on DuSable's mother tongue, which is Creole, DuSable would have said that, okay, vini ici, m'bati, ou établissement hier, ou établissement, côté où ramasser tout le monde. Il fait tout le monde faire tête ensemble. It's a big word in Haitian language for tête ensemble. Get your hands together. Get together. Tête ensemble. Nous faisons tête ensemble, l'ancêtre de croyant, et puis tout le monde a vivre, et puis pas de différence entre le monde, pas de différence entre culture ça et culture ça. Tout le monde, c'est frères actionnaires, on vit ensemble. Good job. All right then. Okay, so once again, thank you for coming, and so you have a lot to unpack. You know, I mean, we took you through a lot. It's been a long day for you, but hopefully you would have learned something. And but feel free to come back. You know, and to revisit the place, to revisit your trail, and be involved in what's going on. Be involved in what's going on in Chicago. Be involved with DuSable Heritage Association. We have a partnership with UIC, and we want that partnership to flourish. And you're always welcome. And let's get together. And then, okay, DuSable Park. Ole!
All right, sac passé. Good. We are at the end. We are at the end of our journey today. So we'd like to take a minute to thank all of you for joining us, for coming here and sharing this exciting day with us. We hope that maybe next year when you come, or maybe the year after, the celebration will be across the river on DuSable Park itself. We are still working on it. We have a special thought for all our supporters and friends from all over the world who are watching us through Facebook right now. We've been streaming the whole event, and we are grateful to Friends of the Park for taking care of that side of the Facebook side of what has been happening today. So hello to everybody in the rest of the United States, in France and in Haiti, everybody else who's been watching us. So thank you again everybody for coming. We are at the end of the event until 5 p.m. and then 6 p.m. here, and then we will leave the last few minutes to the drummers as we are all enjoying the rest of the day. Okay, goodbye, take care.